First off, I want to thank Christine for her thought for today because it goes very well with the topic of my speech. How many of you have wanted to do something such as volunteer at Big Brothers Big Sisters, to work at a homeless shelter, to go back to school, to do any of those things? Let me see a show of hands on people who have wanted to do something but didn't do it for some reason. We as people tend to think when something is presented to us, the first thing out of our mind is we think, why can I not do that? What is going to stop me from doing that? Instead of seeing a problem or an issue or something you want to do and thinking to yourself, how can I go about doing that? How will I go ahead and do this thing? How will I be able to go be a big brother, big sister? How will I be able to volunteer at my church? What I'm going to tell you about today is where I get my source of inspiration for going and looking to how I can do something rather than how I can't. I like to talk about my son a lot in Toastmasters. We're very proud of him and all the accomplishments that he's made. What I don't really talk about is what he had to go through to get to this problem. My son, from the age of about 9 till the age of 12, was an epileptic to where he had seizures. He was terrible. He would be sitting around doing anything. The next thing you know, he's having a seizure. And you don't know how frustrating it is as a parent to see your child in the middle of a seizure and know that there's absolutely nothing you can do. You can't touch him, you can't roll him over, you can't really do anything because he could have an adverse reaction just to the touch. He could hurt you or he could hurt him. So after he was diagnosed with epilepsy, we went to a neurologist and he was prescribed a medication called Tegretol. Tegretol has potential side effects to people who are of Asian descent. And not thinking about it at the time and reading through potential side effects, my son's great-grandfather was half Chinese. Just looking at him, you'd never know that he has Chinese in his ancestry. But, of course, and we just like to say it's because he's lucky, he had a very severe side effect. He had a rash from literally the top of his head down to his feet. It was raised, his face was swollen, his neck was swollen, his skin cracked and everything. He thought that he was going to die from having this rash. It didn't get really that bad, but he had to stop playing sports, he had to stop doing the things that he loved. And he thought, you know, I don't know what to do, Dad. You can't help me. And again, I was helpless. But my son, being the person that he is, said, you know, I really felt that I was going to die, and I'm really going to make up for that. From now on, I'm going to do everything that I could possibly do. I'm going to try everything. I'm not taking no for an answer. Anytime that I see anything that I want to do, I'm just going to do it. And a very good example of this is that he attended boarding school at Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills. The night before we were going to go, he was 13 at the time. The night before we were due to go to the Cranbrook meet and greet where he would take the test to see if he got accepted into the school and everything, there was a big, huge blizzard in Lansing. It was January in 2005, big, huge blizzard. At the time, my son wore his hair in braids, so he had to have his hair done perfectly to go to the thing. Well, we found a person who braided hair, who came to our house in a blizzard. She happened to have a 4x4. And I told him, you know, there's a blizzard, you won't get your hair done? He says, no, something is gonna happen. He says, I just know this lady's gonna make it here. And he knew he was positive. So the lady calls and says, hey, I can still come over and do your hair. And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, not a problem. I heard that your son is going to apply for Cranbrook, and I really want to do his hair. I want to do that. I want to help you guys out. So she comes over, does his hair. We go to the reception. He takes the test, is accepted into Cranbrook. And so he's accepted into Cranbrook, and the next thing that we say is that, okay, Chris, you got accepted into in Cranbrook, but there's absolutely no way that we can afford it. The only way that you can go to Cranbrook is if you win the Crane Scholarship. And the Crane Scholarship is a $20,000 a year scholarship that goes to a student in Lansing. And the only way you can go is if you win the Crane Scholarship. And we're not going to help you fill out the scholarship applications. You have to do it all on your own. So when I tell my son that, he says to himself, okay. He doesn't say, oh my goodness, I can't fill it out, I can't do that. His thoughts are, okay, I can definitely do this. Well, you just tell me when the deadlines are. And so we gave him the scholarship packet. He looked at it, he read through it, he said, okay, now I'm going to go and ask Mrs. Brown, who was his main teacher, and Mrs. Davis, who was his other teacher. He's going to ask them to write essays for him. So he asked them to write essays. They wrote the essays. He collected them all himself. He said, Dad, can I have a stamp? I gave him a stamp. He put it in the mail. And about 2 weeks later, we found out that he had won the scholarship to Cranbrook. And that's the only way that he was able to go to Cranbrook. So my son has rubbed off on the family. People laugh at us sometimes because when people tell us something, we always say, sure, we can do that, rather than, no, I can't make it. No, we don't say it, we're too busy. A very good example when I personally fell off the Robinson way. We were at a speech contest in the fall, and Carol Krahinsky approached me and she said, Mary Gibbs has told me that I think you'll make a good area governor. First thing out of my mouth was, no, can't do it. No, there's no way. I can't do that. And then thought, okay, this is going away. They're not going to ask me again. Well, I got another telephone call from Carol about 2 weeks ago, and thinking to myself, okay, well, I'll just put her off. I'll ask a question. I'll just say, well, I can't. I'm thinking, well, I can't do this because. And I tell her, you know what? Give me a couple of days to think about it. And because I wasn't really going to do it at first, because I was going through my mind. There was, okay, I can't do it because too much time. I can't do it because it's the summer. I can't do it because this. So I came up with multiple reasons to not be able to be the area governor. So I thought, okay, I'm going to call my wife, and she's going to tell me why I can't do it. Well, I called my wife, and I said, hey, Toastmasters asked me to be the governor of Area 7. The very first thing out of my wife's mouth was, not. Oh, you can't do that. The very first thing is, wow, that's really wonderful. You should go and do that. And so it reminded me of the Robinson way, that we can do anything that we set our minds to, as long as we look for the positive, you can do that. So at the end of my story, and the point that I want to make to all of you, decide something that you have always wanted to do, something that you have been putting off, just coming up for reasons why you can't do it. Oh, I can't do it because of this. Oh, I can't do it because of that. Find that thing that you want to do and try something different and do it. Mr. Toastmaster, thank you very much. Thank you, Greg.
Vidya, can you please hit, or Carrie, one of you, when you get